When the Holy Spirit takes control, a devastating struggle you can't ignore, the air grew thick with an energy none could explain, a storm brewing in the quiet town of Elmwood. In the middle of a regular Sunday service, something unimaginable happened. The congregation, once united in their hymns, suddenly froze. Eyes widened, chairs scraped back, and babies began to cry. A cacophony of chaos unraveled as the sacred space trembled with a presence more fearsome than any preacher's sermon. A chilly breeze swept through, extinguishing candles and casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls. The pastor's voice faltered, caught in his throat like a lump of ice. Whispers filled the room. "Did you feel that? What's happening?" Gasps echoed, drowning out the last notes of the organ, leaving only silence, and an ominous feeling of something waiting just beyond their reach. As the atmosphere thickened, an inexplicable force swept through the crowd. A heavy dread settled in the pit of every stomach, hearts pounding like a drum. Rows of people turned, searching for answers in one another's wide eyes. It was as if the very essence of the Holy Spirit had descended, yet there was a weight to it, a deathly gravity that felt sinister, twisting their faith into a knot of fear. One woman screamed as she fell to her knees, another clamored for the exit, her breath coming in frantic gasps. The collective gasp like a wave moved through the crowd. Children clutched their mothers, who could only murmur, it's okay," trying to soothe the rising panic. But it was not okay. It hadn't been okay for a while. Huddled in the back, Oliver watched, forehead damp with sweat, as shadows shifted and flickered. He could feel a pulse in the air, something alive, threatening. His chest felt tight, breath catching as if the weight of invisible hands pressed down on him. Everyone was consumed by confusion, anger bubbling to the top, voices raised in fear. "What do we do?" Someone shouted, but no one had the answer. No one could explain the suffocating dread creeping through the hall. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But just as suddenly as it began, the force lifted, leaving behind an echo of tension. Yet the mystery in the air hung heavier now. What had just happened? Across the room, someone let out a nervous chuckle, expecting it to wash away the fear, but it only cranked up the unease. It was a shared glance between strangers, an unspoken agreement that whatever they faced was far from over. Rumors would swirl, town gossip would explode. No one would walk away unchanged. Oliver rubbed the back of his neck, shaking off the uncertainty crowding his thoughts, but a question lingered: had something truly dark just visited their peaceful town? And if so, would it ever return? The service that was meant to lift them up had turned into something much, much more. They were left standing at the edge of a chasm, peering in, desperate for answers but fearful of what they might find. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, wrapping around Oliver like a cold shroud. The air itself felt charged, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for the next act to unfold. He scanned the room, desperate for some familiarity, but the people around him looked transformed, lost and bewildered, like sheep without a shepherd. No one really spoke, they only exchanged apprehensive glances, trying to piece together what had just transpired. Then, breaking the tense quiet, a child's piercing wail cut through the air. It shattered the silence and reverberated against the church's ivory walls. Mothers instinctively tightened their grips on their little ones, pulling them closer as if trying to shield them from an unseen threat. Even the pastor, usually so steady in his faith, stood rooted in place, his brows knitted in confusion. "What is going on?" he finally croaked, his voice barely a whisper, thick with fear and disbelief. Oliver took a deep breath, willing the panic to stifle before it consumed him whole. He could feel a strange energy shifting. There, in the corner, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A shadow, or was it more than that? He squinted, heart racing. The flicker seemed intentional now, almost animated, as if it had a life of its own. But it was the way it twisted and curled that sent shivers down his spine, like watching smoke weave into patterns, hinting at something more sinister lurking just beyond sight. "Did you see that?" someone gasped. A murmur erupted among the gathered crowd, voices swelling into a tide of uncertainty. What was that? Oliver fought against the tide of murky fear threatening to pull him under. He clenched his fists, each heartbeat loud and muddled in his ears. He needed to know to understand why their church, once a sanctuary, felt not only unwelcoming but dangerous. The familiar wooden pews seemed foreign now, and the stained glass windows twisted into grotesque visages in the cryptic light. As the terror in the room built, something remarkable happened. An older gentleman rose, elderly eyes flashing with something that looked like determination. He was a respected member of the community, known for his unwavering faith. He cleared his throat and began to pray, the words tumbling from his lips like a torrent. "Lord, protect us. Do not abandon us in our hour of need." The sound rose over the swell of confusion, reaching for the heavens, yet, with each utterance, the shadows flickered more violently, the air growing heavier, almost electric with tension. It was a desperate plea, echoing between heaven and hell, and Oliver could feel an unsettling shift in the atmosphere. The voice of the man trembled, yet it spread through the crowd, igniting a flicker of shared hope, but then came the sound like shattering glass, sharp and unsettling, piercing through the spirit of the prayer. Oliver spun, eyes wide as he caught sight of the pulpit. The cross hanging behind it trembled, rocking as if an unseen hand pushed against it. He could hardly breathe, a cold dread creeping up his spine. His pulse raced, each beat a drum counting down to something inevitable. "Stay calm." The pastor's voice rose again, but it trembled under the weight of uncertainty, failing to quell the rising tide of panic. The room stared, a collective realization dawning they were witnesses to a battle beyond the veil between good and evil. Oliver's mind darted, searching for answers as chaos began to unfurl. Had they opened a door better left closed? Where was the holy power they had once revered, and what had taken its place? As fear morphed into questions, he felt something primal awaken within him, the need to confront the darkness lurking in their midst. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into near darkness. "What is happening?" someone shrieked, and Oliver's heart raced. In that moment, a voice, low and echoing, whispered through the darkness, promising revelation while cloaked in malice. "You invited me." Oliver felt every hair on his body stand on end. A choice lay ahead: face the unknown or succumb to the shadows creeping closer. But the clock was ticking, and he knew whatever was about to unfold, they were no longer merely witnesses. They were part of something far larger, and it was hungry. What legacy would the town of Elmwood inherit from this day? And would they have the strength to confront the spirit that now graced them with its presence? The darkness enveloped them, swallowing both light and hope. The air crackled, thick with tension and unspoken terror, sending Oliver's thoughts spiraling into chaos. He felt the energy shift, coiling tighter with an almost predatory anticipation. The shadows twisted, teasing at the edges of his vision, hinting at something far more sinister than he had ever envisioned. Someone stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The loud crash echoed like thunder, breaking through the oppressive silence. It sent a ripple through the congregation. Mothers gasped, fathers instinctively shielded their families, and the elderly man's prayer grew fainter as fear tightened like a noose. "Stay close," Oliver shouted, forcing himself to think clearly. The weight of the moment pressed against him. He felt responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders, the urge to protect those who seemed paralyzed by fear. "We need to stay together." But as he moved towards the nearest family, he saw the look of sheer panic on their faces. Their eyes darted, wide and shimmering with the reflection of flickering candles that remained defiantly lit, anchored in their brass holders despite the chaos. "Why isn't it stopping?" a voice cried out, barely above a whisper, painted with a blend of disbelief and raw terror. The atmosphere was thickening, and Oliver could feel the shadows encroaching, clawing closer. It was as if the very walls of the church were pulsing with some dark heartbeat. Then he felt something brushing against his leg, cold and unsettling. He stumbled back, heart pounding as the shadow needled between his feet. It pulled back just enough to let him breathe, then surged forward again, slipping over the floor like liquid darkness. The air shifted from the quiet terror to palpable madness, rising to a fever pitch. "What do you want?" someone shouted into the murky void. Almost immediately, laughter, cruel and mocking, echoed back, a sound that sent a shiver up Oliver's spine. It reverberated through the room, mingling with the terrified gasps of the congregation, creating a dissonance that left all comfort behind. In the front row, a woman swayed, her eyes glazed as if caught in a trance. "It's coming for us," she murmured, voice distant. Oliver's heart sank. "What do you mean?" he demanded, stepping closer, dread blooming in his chest. From the darkness, it's here. Her words hung in the air, heavy with foreboding, just as the last flickering candle sputtered and died. They were enveloped in darkness, an almost suffocating stillness enveloping them, a silence that felt alive. As fear gnawed at him, Oliver thought about the silence. The shadows were no longer a mere visual disturbance, they hungered, they sought. A pulse beat inside the room, a throbbing reminder of a presence they could not see. Someone screamed, a raw, primal sound that cut through the darkness. He recognized that it belonged to a child, the same child who had cried earlier. "Help! Someone help!" A figure rushed forward, stumbling over pews, desperate and wild. It was the pastor. His face was pale, slick with sweat, but his eyes burned bright with frantic resolve. He raised both hands, a shield against the malevolence. "Leave us alone!" he cried, but his voice trembled, revealing the doubt that had crept in. "God is not here." The shadow called back, and its voice submerged them all in dread. Oliver's heart raced as he processed the horror unfolding. They were indeed a part of something much larger, something dark and twisted wrapped around their souls. They needed to act, to confront this horror escalating in front of them, a battle not just to survive, but to reclaim their sanctuary. The pastor turned to Oliver, eyes wide and pleading. "We have to fight." But what weapon could they wield against the darkness that had swallowed their faith? The fear danced dangerously close, whispering promises of deception. The question hung between them, was it too late? As Oliver felt the grip of shadows tightening around him, a single thought crystallized in his mind: if they failed to confront this entity, they might inherit a legacy of despair that would consume their town forever. What could they draw upon to wrestle back their sanctuary? And would it be enough? The air was thick, oppressive, swirling with despair and confusion. Oliver's mind battled with itself, questioning if blind courage could truly stand against an ancient malevolence. Darkness murmured around them, thick as fog, offering both fear and a strange familiarity. But among the chaos, the pastor's face shone with a glimmer of determination, a ray of hope in this grave night. "Pray!" the pastor commanded, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence like a knife. Those words hung tangible in the air, a fragile lifeline in the thick murk of terror. Oliver felt a surge within him as he grappled with the reality of their situation. This was not just a test of faith, it was a fight for their lives. The congregation hesitated, fear pinning them in place like heavy chains. "Come on!" Oliver urged, yelling amidst the swirling shadow. "We can't give in to this. Pray like you mean it." And slowly, painfully, they gathered their courage, old and young alike leaning into the battle, fingers trembling, they clasped each other's hands, heartbeats synchronizing with the silent prayer. The pastor's voice rose with authority, echoing off the dark walls. "We are not alone. We stand together against you." With each word, Oliver felt their combined strength surge, pushing against the suffocating shadows. Suddenly, the darkness screeched, a high-pitched wail that made the hairs on Oliver's arms stand on end. It twisted around the room, rattling the very foundations of the church, a desperate creature revealed. This was no mere absence of light, it was alive, a sentient force thrumming with malice. The flickering remnants of candlelight fluttered like dying fireflies, each small glow taunting the encroaching gloom. Yet the congregation pressed on, their prayers rising like a hymn against despair, a beautiful cacophony that cut deeply into the dark's heart. Oliver squeezed his eyes shut, drawing from the well of faith buried deep inside. It felt foreign, yet familiar, the belief in something greater than fear. "You won't take us," he shouted, the words exploding from him with an intensity he didn't know he possessed. In a shocking rush, the shadows recoiled, as if struck by an invisible force. They flickered and dimmed, revealing flashes of the church's worn but steadfast wooden beams, the stained glass windows quietly gleaming with hints of color long buried beneath dark intent. The congregation roared in a renewed fervor, their voices blending into a powerful anthem, a defiant stand against the abyss, and then, amidst the chaos, Oliver caught a glimpse of the woman from the front row. Her voice had shifted to a wail, but not from fear. Something had awakened in her. Eyes wide, she stared past everyone, her mouth moving but no words emerged. In those moments, her face twisted, caught between the forces of good and evil, a vessel of uncontrolled energy. "It's feeding on our fear," she screamed, her voice suddenly clear despite the madness. Oliver's heart raced. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a revelation. They had allowed their terror to stoke the very flames of this darkness. He looked at the pastor, and he saw the same realization dawn in his weary eyes. "Focus. Feel the light within you," the pastor shouted, his own faith igniting like a beacon amidst the suffocating dread. The realization struck Oliver with electric zeal. In fighting against the shadows, they had to harness their faith instead. Oliver's breath quickened as he grasped the potential of their unity, their collective strength growing tangible. The darkness shrieked in protest, fluctuating with rage, stretching and contorting as if trying to fend off their light. But just as the tide seemed to turn, the shadows consolidated into a swirling mass. A figure began to take shape, emerging from the depths of dark despair. A grotesque mockery of humanity, it bore no soul and carried a visage of terror that struck fear deeper than any nightmare. The congregation's voices intertwined further, desperate but unwavering. Silence broke, hearts raced. They had crossed a line, and now they stood at the edge where light met dark. "What do we do?" Oliver's mind raced, grappling with the looming entity that threatened to consume them. It all came down to this moment, this choice. Do we confront it or flee? The weight of uncertainty hung heavy. As the malevolent figure lingered, its hollow gaze fixed on Oliver, he sensed a flicker of hope intertwining with fear, but the darkness stirred again, swirling with malevolence, and Oliver realized the ultimate question was before him: would they discover the power within, or succumb to the panic that threatened to rip them apart? Fear wrapped around him tight, a vice, as they faced a reckoning that could eclipse everything they ever believed. Would they turn to the very thing they feared, or let it devour them whole? That answer lingered just beyond his grasp, and the shadows loomed closer, waiting. The shadows pulsated, cold and relentless, wrapping like serpents around the church's bones. Oliver stood at the forefront of this chaotic sea of darkness, every instinct screaming at him to run. But as he held fast to the pastor's words, an unfamiliar warmth flickered inside him, a small light in the thick darkness that felt almost tangible. "Make room for the light," he urged, his voice breaking through the tension like a crack in stone. The congregation shifted, restless and afraid, but they gathered in closer, drawn together by fed hope. The grotesque figure writhed before them, its smile an unnatural crescent carved into darkness, eyes void of empathy. It moved in unnatural rhythms, mimicking the way a puppet dances, taunting them as the pastor raised his hands toward the entity. "We will not fall," he cried, his voice trembling yet powerful. "We are vessels of light." Each word seemed to blaze through the air, striking like a match against the damp kindling of despair. The flickering candles flickered in response, their flames dancing wildly, pulling the shadows backward in uncertainty. Oliver fought to focus on that glimmer of hope, taking a deep breath. "We can do this." he urged, sensing the collective pulse of energy begin to thrum through the group. Suddenly, the darkness elongated, slithering toward them like a predator smelling blood. The air thickened with malice, heavy with despair as the figure lunged forward, revealing jagged teeth that gleamed with a sinister hunger. Screams erupted as the congregation fell back, jostling against one another in panic. "No!" Oliver shouted, his determination igniting once more. "Don't let it break you." He gripped the nearest hand, holding tight to that spark of unity. The others joined in, fear-filled eyes locked with his, willing to fight back. "Keep praying," the pastor bellowed, his voice rising above the chaos. It was a command, a mantra against the approaching darkness. They repeated the words, becoming a chorus of voices woven together in defiance, and then, just as the figure's gnashing maw grew nearer, the woman from the front row screamed again, her voice soaring with clarity. "It thrives on division. Don't let it split us." The truth of her words hit like a bolt of lightning. It was not only a battle of strength but a battle of belief. Oliver's heart raced with fear, rolling through him like a storm, but he channeled that energy, amplifying the momentum. "We have to be one. Together." The air pulsed as whispers turned to shouts, each echoing louder than the last, a great wave of prayer colliding with the consuming darkness. The entity writhed, its ghastly form trembling under the force of their truth, regressing into the shadows for the briefest instant. "Feel the light within you," Oliver bellowed once more, lifting his voice above the chaos. With every syllable, he felt a breaking of chains, a dismantling of fear. The figure shrieked, a sound so piercing it seemed to warp the very fabric of reality around them, but the moment of triumph was elusive. As they pressed forward, their unity shimmering with promise, shadows surged in retaliation, bringing forth a horde of faces trapped in torment, wise souls twisted in agony, mouths wide open in silent screams. "Oh God, take away this horror!" Someone cried, and the congregation's chant faltered momentarily, the sight of the tortured souls washing over them like a chill. They were losing ground. "Keep your eyes on the light," Oliver shouted again, his heart hammering, desperation pouring into his voice like a desperate fist. "We are not alone, fight together." He felt the fire ignite within each person's chest as they grasped onto the hope of freedom. The air thickened, shimmering with possibility. They had discovered their strength was not just in numbers but in the collective belief that could shatter chains, could defy the darkness. But then, amid the shrieks and shouts, the figure stepped forward, drawing closer, its hollow eyes fixated on Oliver. A chilling whisper sibilated through the air, curling around him. "Join me, or watch them." Perish. His breath caught in his throat. The depth of fear threatened to drown him again. But would he succumb? Or find the courage to fight not just for himself but for everyone he held dear? What would he choose as the shadows drew ever nearer? The choice loomed, tantalizingly close. The air thickened with dread, swirling like a storm ready to unleash chaos. Oliver's heart raced under the weight of the grotesque figure's sinister proposition. "Join me, or watch them perish." The grotesque figure grinned wider, and Oliver felt the icy tendrils of despair lace around his spine. Fear gripped him so tightly that he could barely breathe. "Fight back. Don't give in." His voice rang out, desperate and strained, trying to drown out the seductive call of the entity. It was just a nightmare, he reminded himself, but with each passing second, it felt more like a waking horror. The pastor stretched out his arms, illuminating the trembling crowd. "Light. You are filled with light," he urged, trying to reclaim their momentum. But the shadows hissed back, slithering along the ground, hungry for the flickering spirit of hope. "We've come too far," Oliver shouted, a fire ignited in his core despite the horror looming around him. He squeezed the hands of those around him, urging them to remember their shared strength. Together. Each person's grip tightened, their resolve strengthening in the face of relentless darkness, but the creature only laughed, a sound like nails scraping glass. "What is together when fear binds your hearts? You are but grains of sand, easily divided." With that, It lunged closer, and Oliver found himself frozen, faced not just with the shadows, but with his own inner chaos. Doubt seeped in like frost creeping under a door, the shadows erupted into a cacophony, voices rising and falling in a slithering chorus, each whisper trying to claw at Oliver's mind. "You're not strong enough, you will fail, leave them behind, no." He blurted out, shaking his head furiously, banishing the negativity with sheer determination. "I want to abandon them." Suddenly, a sharp scream pierced through the dark, halting his thoughts. A figure fell, struggling against the oppressive weight of the shadows. It was the woman from the front row, her eyes wide and frantic. "Help me!" she cried, her voice dripping with terror. The shadows wrapped tighter around her, pulling her into the maw of despair. "Hold on!" Oliver shouted, moving instinctively toward her. He threw aside fear and reached out with everything he had. Others rallied, their voices rising in unison, binding together to pull her back. The figure snarled, furious that they were not collapsing under its dominion. "Foolish mortals! Feel their pain. Relinquish your hope." It thrust its arms wide, unleashing a wave of ethereal anguish that rippled through the congregation. "No!" A defiant roar erupted from within Oliver. "We are here for each other." The flames of the candles flickered defiantly, mirroring the fire in Oliver's heart. "We want to let you take her." The ground beneath him vibrated as chains of fear began to rattle. Spurred by their unity, the congregation pressed closer together, forming a barrier of unyielding light. He could feel warm tendrils wrapping around his throat, but he pushed through, daring to stand against the tide. And just as Oliver thought they might finally break free, the shadows thickened, absorbing the light. "You think this is enough?" The creature sneered, lunging deeper, its teeth gleaming like blades in the dark. "One more push." They had to give everything they had, but uncertainty clawed at his mind. Would this battle seal their fate? Would the light hold or shatter under pressure? A spark of clarity cut through, illuminating thoughts deeper than fear. He focused on his love for each person around him, and suddenly warmth flowed through him, binding them all together. "Trust in each other. Remember what we stand for." The congregation picked up the chant, voices infusing with newfound strength. But would it be enough to conquer the evil that threatened to consume them? With the dark entity closing in, Oliver faced the bitter choice: would he risk everything and fight, or surrender to the shadows lurking just beyond the light? The decision loomed, heavy like a storm cloud, about to break. The air crackled with charged energy, each heartbeat resonating in Oliver's chest like a war drum. Shadows snarled and twisted around them, but he held tight to the flickering lights of the candles, sparks of hope illuminating the despair that threatened to consume everyone. The shadows pressed closer, sliding against the congregation's light like a suffocating fog. Oliver felt the frantic breaths of those around him, their silent pleas echoing louder than the creature's menacing laughter. Each whisper their fears, their doubts felt heavy, pulling him down. But that warmth inside him blazed brighter, fueled by their collective spirit. "Hold on!" he shouted again, his voice breaking through the chaos. "We're not alone. We have each other." The crowd began to chant alongside him, their voices gathering strength. The energy pulsed through them, warding off the malevolent presence inching closer. The grotesque figure bared its teeth, eyes swirling like dark whirlpools. "You think your puny unity can defeat what you cannot comprehend?" Its voice echoed, booming against the walls, drowning out their chant momentarily. "I am the darkness that exists in all of you, your insecurities, your regrets, they are my power." Oliver felt the cold grip of doubt wrap tighter around his heart. Memories flashed of failure, a lost love, moments when he felt utterly alone. "No," he whispered, shaking his head furiously. But then, from the back of the crowd, a voice broke through. It was the elderly man who always greeted him after service, eyes twinkling to pit age. "Do not let the shadows lie to you. Look within. We are stronger than we think." A glimmer of hope ignited once more, as Oliver turned his gaze on the faces surrounding him. Each face told a story of resilience, of dreams deferred but not forgotten. He focused on their courage. Their unshakable love for each other. Feel that? Oliver shouted, his voice rising above the cacophony. The light inside us? It's real. We are not just individuals, we're a family bound by faith. So let us show this creature how powerful we really are. With renewed determination, he raised his arms high, the candlelight flickering defiantly. On the count of 3. Together. A swell of energy buzzed in the air. 1, 2, 3. The congregation roared, their united voices blending into a beautiful symphony of defiance. The flames surged higher, casting radiant light that pushed back the encroaching darkness. Oliver felt as if he could soar, each note of their chant lifting him closer to the heavens. The creature staggered, eyes wide with disbelief, but it quickly recalibrated. Naive fools! You think mere words can challenge a force like me? It reached out, grasping at the light, its claws seeking the core of their unity. But Oliver stood firm, feeling the warmth of each person, understanding that this wasn't merely a battle against shadows, it was a confrontation with their deepest fears and insecurities. We are the light. We will not bow. Suddenly, shadows exploded around them, shrieking and swirling, trying to shatter their resolve. The ground shook, the very air thickened with malevolence. Oliver felt the weight of the world battering him down, yet he focused harder, drawing strength from the faces around him. Push back! He yelled, voice cracking, conviction ringing clear. We will not be silenced. Just then, a blinding wave of light burst forth from the core of their unity, a dazzling explosion that illuminated the space. Silence fell for a heartbeat, and Oliver's heart sank. Was this the moment of victory or defeat? I want to let it end like this, he murmured, but uncertainty washed over him like a cold tide. The swirling shadows dissipated for a moment, revealing something in the distance, something darker, looming even larger than before. Had they merely stirred the beast? Prepare yourselves, the grotesque laughter echoed one final time, pulling Oliver back into the fray. What lay ahead? Could they confront the darkness, or would their hope splinter once again? The struggle had escalated. The real fight was just beginning. The light faded, but Oliver's heart raced. The shadows recoiled, like wounded serpents, revealing an even darker entity behind them, a vast silhouette, pulsating with a life of its own. It loomed ominously, every inch a reminder of despair. Fools! The creature growled, its voice brick-heavy. You think you can flicker against the void? I am the embodiment of every dark wish, every whispered regret. I am the ripple of doubt in your soul. The crowd gasped. It felt as if the very air had sharp edges, slicing through their bravery. Oliver felt the resolve of the congregation quiver, their chanting faltering, smothered under the dread that filled once familiar corners of their hearts. Don't let it in! He cried, desperate. Remember the light we summoned together. Remember who we are. For a moment, he saw pockets of determination flash in the eyes of those around him, his friends, his neighbors. The glimmers of hope sparked as their whispers began anew, shaky, but there. We are not alone, they murmured, the sound mixing with the heavier chorus of Oliver's own heartbeat. Do you feel that? He shouted, desperately grasping for the thread of unity. It's still here. The love, the kindness. Everything we've fought for. Then, the deep shadows twisted, forming clawed hands that reached for them. Like a living entity, the darkness shot out, snatching at the closest figures within the group. Screams erupted, shattering the fragments of their resolve. The elderly man Oliver had heard before staggered, caught in the creature's pull, his frail form lifting off the ground. No! Oliver yelled, a surge of adrenaline spiking through him. He leaped forward, battling against the fear that threatened to stifle him. Let him go. He could feel the cold tendrils wrap around his legs, trying to drag him back, but he fought with every ounce of strength. He shouted again, words spilling from his lips with the urgency of a flood. United, we stand. Together, we will overcome. Others joined him, rushing to form a protective circle around the man. Hands gripped hands, creating a bridge against the encroaching shadows. They formed a gauntlet of hope against the darkness, a pulse of steadfast light ignited by their collective will. The dark creature roared in frustration, its voice vibrating through the air like the tolling of a great bronze bell. Shadows danced frantically, shrieking in desperation. Your ignorance will be your undoing. It hissed, its breath like frost settling into their bones. But the light started to swell. It was small at first, but it grew, billowing like a shield around them. Oliver could feel the warmth radiating from their joined hands. It pulsated, reflecting the heartbeats of the gathered crowd, determined, resolved, unwavering. Push through. He gasped, locking eyes with the elderly man, who nodded, a glimmer of hope igniting between them. Together, we are more than shadows. We are light. In that moment, an explosion of brilliance erupted from within them, a radiant wave that tossed the shadows aside like autumn leaves. It surged forth, a tide of brilliant pureness hitting the creature square in the chest. But Oliver's breath caught as the creature howled in pain and rage, the boundaries of its form bending and shifting, revealing what lay within the very essence of the darkness, one they all knew too well. Your memories. It shrieked, twisting in agony. Your doubts. They are my sustenance. The figure began to pulse, shadows spiraling around it as if trying to shield itself from the encroaching light. And in that moment, Oliver understood the greatest fight was not to free the congregation from the creature, but to confront what the darkness signified within each heart. With that realization, Oliver closed his eyes, feeling the heat of the light grow within, and focused on the hopes, dreams, and connections that defined who they were. But time was running short, and the shadows shifted, looking for a way to take back control. What else awaits, he thought fiercely, daring the darkness to attack again. We are the light, but what will it take to destroy this? The monstrous entity roared defiantly, ready for its next move. And as the congregation held firm, a shadow slashed through the light, forcing them all to confront their darkest fears yet. Would they endure? Or would the darkness win? The creature's roar echoed like a thunderclap, vibrating through the very ground beneath them. Oliver felt the tremor pulse not just in the air, but in his bones. The shadows flickered, a swarm of darkness coiling and weaving, preparing to strike. He opened his eyes, heart racing, as fear began to worm its way back into the collective soul of the crowd, threatening to unravel everything they had built. No! Don't back down! Oliver shouted, voice taut with urgency. He scanned the faces around him, worn and familiar but now marred with doubt. Memories danced in the shadows, feeding the monster. They were reflections of their insecurities, the things they had buried deep, lost dreams, broken promises, moments of failure. He could see them play across his friend's features, their eyes clouded with the heavy weight of regret. Remember who we are. He gripped the hands beside him tighter, squeezing with a fervor born from desperation. A woman beside him, Margaret, her voice shook as she whispered, "What if it's too late, Oliver? What if this is all we'll ever be?" The word struck him like a punch to the gut. It was the very doubt he had been trying to fight off, reflected in her eyes. He felt the cold grip of despair tighten, making it hard to breathe. No, he breathed, steadying himself. We will not let it win. Not today. With renewed determination, Oliver turned within, searching for the warmth he had felt earlier. It flickered, like a dying ember, but it was still there. In that moment, he channeled every positive thought, every cherished memory, every reason why they had come together in the first place. He envisioned the laughter they had shared, the tears of joy, the hands lifted in celebration, moments that defined their humanity. The light began to flicker stronger, pulsing in response to his thoughts, as if reacting to their collective heartbeat. Together! He cried out, his voice laced with fierce hope. Let the love we share drown the darkness. As if on cue, the circle of hands around him tightened, and the light expanded. It spiraled outward in a brilliant cascade, filling the air with vibrant colors that pierced the shadows like shards of glass. The creature flinched, recoiling from the intensity of their resolve, but it was not over yet. It's not just memories. The creature howled, voice distilled with rage. It's the pain. The suffering. The loneliness. Oliver felt a shiver run down his spine. The pain was real, he couldn't deny it. The abyss called to him, whispering of regrets and solitude. He thought of his own failings, the nights spent pondering choices left unmade. Wouldn't it be easier to surrender to that familiar darkness? But he pushed the thought away, and with it, the doubts swirling within the crowd. We are stronger than our pasts. We are shaped by moments of love, not despair. He shouted, then, a surge of belief rippled through the congregation. More voices joined his, brave and resolute, echoing his sentiment. We are stronger. The creature writhed, its form twisting in agony as the light crashed around it like a tidal wave. Figures from the crowd rose, one by one, reflecting shared determination. The shadows recoiled further until they began to fray, unraveling at the seams, but just as victory seemed to draw near, a chilling laughter erupted from the creature, low and menacing. You think light will save you? I will show you the depths of your despair. And in an instant, the darkness lashed out once more, this time, far more insidiously. Tendrils of shadows wrapped around individuals, grasping at their throats, dragging them into a nightmare of their own making. One by one, faces went pale, horror etched upon features, echoing the nightmarish memories the shadows had conjured. Fight it! Oliver shouted, desperation flooding his voice. Don't let it take you. He noticed Margaret's eyes glazing over, doubt swelling at the corners of her mind. No. He fought against the shadows, stretching out both hands towards her, his heart racing. Remember our happy moments. Remember who you truly are. Yet the vines tightened their grip, and Oliver felt desperation clawing at his heart. The pain of seeing hope falter twisted deeper. Could they really break free? With a deep breath, he prepared to summon the last reservoir of light left within them. He had to bring them back. They must fight their truths and not let the darkness define them. In that critical moment, as the shadows threatened to swallow them whole, an overwhelming energy surged through the crowd, igniting their collective defiance. But would it be enough? Could they overcome the very essence of their fears before it consumed everything? A hush fell among them as Oliver braced for whatever was coming next, and he knew deep inside that the final battle was upon them. Would they escape the clutches of despair, or would darkness claim the victory at last? The shadows howled, a cacophony of despair that howled against the walls of the church like a storm battering a fragile home. Oliver felt his resolve fray as the creature bared its jagged teeth, taunting them with their fears. But somewhere deep inside, a flicker of hope endured, a reminder of who they were, and why they had come together in the first place. Together, he yelled, his voice cutting through the noise and forging a pathway into the hearts of those around him. We will fight. The congregation, trembling but resolute, began to join him, voices rising like an unquenchable fire against the consuming darkness. Together. They echoed back, a pulse of bravery intertwined with desperation fueling their spirit, but the entity surged forward, its form coiling and twisting in anger. Fools! You think your unity can conquer me? I am your regrets. I am your pain. It screamed, each word laced with venom that sent chills through Oliver's spine. No, you're wrong. He shouted back, shaking off the cold grip of fear that threatened to seize his heart. We are not just our failures. We are more than the darkness you bring. With each shout, he felt the warmth of strength flow through him, a connection to every hand grasped nearby. The shadows flinched, recoiling from the light rising in unison among them. Don't look away. Call out your hopes. The pastor urged, his eyes shining with determination born from years of steadfast faith. Look at each other. Look at the light that binds us. Oliver could see it, crystal clear, every face revealing the truth buried beneath the weight of despair, laughter shared, victories big and small, friendships forged in the fires of struggle. Together they had stood through storms, and together they would stand against this nightmare. Behind him, he heard the trembling voice of the woman who had foreseen the darkness. It thrives on division. She cried, empowered by their collective pain and courage. The realization washed over him they could harness their experiences, their love, as a weapon against the fears lurking just beneath the surface. Focus. We're not alone. He shouted again, raising his arms high, urging them onwards, fueling the burgeoning fire, and then, like a spark igniting gasoline, the words erupted between them. Remember our strength. Our light. The congregation erupted with primal energy, each shout melding into the next, turning into a symphony of defiance. Faces lit up with determination, hearts beat in sync, creating a wall of hope that the darkness could no longer penetrate. With one final surge, Oliver felt a radiant energy spike, pulses of luminescence spark from every candle, infusing the air with vibrant colors. The shadows writhed and twisted, horrified at the brightness that now surrounded them, retreating under the power of their collective light. Yet, the beast snarled, anger boiling in its swirling abyss. You know nothing. Your light is ineffective against me. I will consume every last flicker you possess and drown you in despair. In that moment, Oliver realized the danger they faced. The entity wasn't just a darkness, it was a whisper of their deepest insecurities, promising to unravel them. But they lived among light, the warmth spread through him like an unbreakable bond, a tether to the love they shared. On the count of 3. Together. Let it be known, he yelled, locking in the moment, we will not fear you. 1. 2. 3. The echo burst forth, a wave of strength crashing against the darkness. The creature writhed in agony, with each pulse of their united souls. The shadows shrank back, unraveling under the might of their light. Suddenly, in a blinding flash, Oliver found himself standing at the forefront, surrounded by friends, neighbors, the entire community, now a single entity, stronger than anything the darkness could throw at them. He felt their love, their faith intertwining, wrapping tightly around them like an impenetrable shield. Push forward. He urged, feeling the energy coalesce into a singular force, a surge of love that seemed to pulsate with every heartbeat. This is our home. We claim it. We are the light. In that instant, everything changed. The darkness, once formidable and endless, began to scatter, shrinking back as if it had been pushed by an invisible hand. The grotesque figure faltered, its laughter twisting into yelps of pain until it let out one final roar that echoed like thunder and faded. Then, silence. The church, once thick with sorrow and fear, now felt alive with the warmth of victory. A thick golden light enveloped the space, illuminating the faces of the congregation. Tears of relief spilled freely as embraces began, laughter breaking through the shadows that had dared to threaten their bond. Oliver collapsed into the arms of the pastor, breathless but alive. We did it, he whispered, a lump in his throat, warmth filling the void that darkness once occupied. Not just you, my son, the pastor replied, his voice thick with emotion. We did this together. This is our legacy. Light emerges from even the darkest places. As the congregation mingled, celebrating their reclamation of sacred ground, Oliver couldn't shake the thought that they had grown stronger, forged in unity through adversity. They would remain vigilant, aware that darkness could return, but now, they harbored a collective strength that would not fade. The future of Elmwood shimmered alive in their hearts, a community woven together by hope and love, strong enough to face anything that dared to threaten their sanctuary. Whatever came next, they would meet it together. The echoes of their bond lingered in the air, an unbreakable promise. And as the light enveloped them, one truth resounded louder than any dark whisper: hope could always rise. You need to subscribe now to catch our next exclusive story. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. Instantaneously share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Your action shapes our community.